All right, everyone. I did have a couple things that we are going to talk about today. The first thing is I already have two questions that I've been asked to discuss. I purposely brought up our E&C pages because some of you have already seen the alert that I did add some stuff to Google Classroom last night. I wanted to make sure that we were prepared with where we were going and what we were doing. You have a few questions that you are going to answer using your E&C pages. And I did have one request already, and it was for, and I'm going to scroll through here real quick because there was only, I think, 12 questions I said total. And I'm trying to very quickly, I took a screenshot of them that were sent to me in my email. I can't quite, all right, so there's one of them, and it was number 20. So I'm just showing you that number 20 was found on page 350. And I did state, as you're looking at what we're referencing, if you have not checked Google Classroom, you will find that I understand the no reassignments are to be completed for completion credit. We are looking at graded work now that we've had a chance to practice and kind of see how all of this is going to work. But we do have our E&C questions that you are still going to be held accountable for. And this was one of the questions assigned, and already this morning I saw we had someone asking for some help, so I want to make sure that I do address it. I am not going to give the final answer, but I am going to help us, I hope, get there a little bit faster. And so in number 20, it does say that shed is 3 feet from the lamppost that is 12 feet high. Shed is 5.5 feet tall, so 5'6" tall. How long is his shadow? So when we are looking at this, you need to address this like we were actually talking about two similar triangles. So what I have here is the picture from number 20, and I am going to address this as two separate triangles. So when I do that, I'm going to have one triangle that is clearly the lamppost, our 12 feet. I'm going to have our other triangle that is shad, which is our 5.5 feet. I do know that whatever his shadow is, I can name X, and whatever the lamppost shadow is, I can name 3 plus X. And I'm going to use our similarity here where I can set up our proportion. Now that I can see that if I have this unknown and I've labeled it X, I know that I'm going to take 3 more feet and have that as 3 plus X. I can now set up my proportion using this information. So I could do 12 to that 5.5 equals 3 plus X over X. Now that's as far as I'm going to go for right now. I'm going to see if we can work that one out on our own. But I think that gets us to a pretty good spot. The other question that was asked, I do believe is on the next section. Yep. is number 14. And number 14 gives us, so this is the one on page 356. And we have, as I copy it down on my own paper, a coordinate plane. And we have R, T, Q, P. They're telling us that the PT bisects RPQ. We have 30, 24, and it tells us T is up at 0.8. All right. We want to figure out what the coordinate of R is. All right. Now, the good part is we also know that R is on the y-axis, so if I have to, I just need to make sure that I am already looking at the fact that our x coordinate should be 0. So our angle bisector theorem tells me that our ratio needs to be set up where we have the sides of our angle are in proportion with the sides that have been divided opposite that angle. So our bisector divides the opposite side proportionally with the sides of our angle. Well, if this here was also our x-axis, that means that we are down at 0. So from 0 to 8, we already know that this has an increment of 8. So we're going to set up our ratios. I have a tendency to go side of an angle to the side of the angle, so 24 to 30 will match 8 to x. I'm going to stop there because once we are able to cross multiply and we figure out what the length of x is, you should be able to figure out how high total we went. So make sure that you use that information. So, depending upon what you've already looked at, I will tell you that I'm keeping track of what days and what problems we go over. So now of the 12 questions that I assigned, I would say that I've got us almost now down to only having to do 10. But that is exactly what I want. I want to create some kind of communication, and I think what we'll try to do is Zoom on Monday, so that if you have questions, I can at least hear your voices and you can talk to me about what's needed. I am trying to encourage more than just one person to communicate so that we do know what we're dealing with. I do want, before I switch over, are there any questions on what we just went over? Because that was the first thing that I wanted to address. Please, if you have questions, please feel free to ask in the chat side. I am going to address another question, and I just got the answer. Emily, I know, asked this question, and it has to do with the no reassignment. And I can honestly say I had no idea. I probably did this question 100 times, I feel like. Probably close to 24, not 100. But I couldn't figure out why it kept coming up wrong because I knew I was correct. I am certain many of you knew you were correct. And maybe there are some of you who figured this out long before I did because I had to get it via email today. When you click in this box down here, immediately all these guys pop up. And we see the fraction one, and we see raise it to a power, or the square root, and we see all of these guys. But the one thing that I did not know is they do have a segment button. Here's our angle. We haven't gotten here yet, but this is the measure of an arc, and here's how we name an arc, so part of a circle. This guy right here is what we have to push so that we can register that we have segments that we're talking about. We keep plugging in, and I say we because I did this as well. I'm plugging in AB, but I'm not plugging in that it's a segment. And then if I come over here and I want to say that it's going to be parallel to ED, I have to call ED a segment. And I know all year I've harped on keeping our symbols appropriate. The minute you put those segments in, you're going to find that you end up with the right answer, where before we were writing them down, it said exactly the same thing, and we couldn't figure out why we weren't getting them correct. So it was because we weren't doing that. And it says for number 14, I ended up getting a never ending, should I round to the hundredths? Wait, I meant 20, the first one we did. So I'll go back to that. I'm sorry, I had to switch my screen over so that I could deal with that. I couldn't, for whatever reason, of course, didn't have multiple ones. So you said, I didn't finish the question, obviously. So you said you had on number 20, a never-ending decimal. Should you round? I do believe if that's the case, let me see what happens on the first one, because I do believe it should work out. We have 12x equals 3 times 5.5 should be 16.5 plus 5.5x. 12 minus 5.5 we know is going to be 6.5. X equals 16.5. And is this the issue? So I found out some other stuff yesterday that I'm actually really proud of, because I didn't know that there were these other amazing buttons on our calculator. So this is probably what you guys got. And I'll wait. Is that correct, Landon? All right. So, sorry again, that delay. That's why I think sometimes the Zoom would work if we would talk. But this guy right here, right above the PRB button, if you look right over here, that F to D button, you can take that and just do second PRB, and it gives us that fraction to decimal. And here's the 2 7/13 that you would be able to answer as the amount of feet. So you could round it, or you could give the exact value answer and do this. Now, of course, I just did a problem with you all, so that's yay, you're down to 1. Here's the other fun thing that I found out yesterday, and I was yesterday days old when I found this out. Just over the ABC button on your calculators, it says ABC, and it has the double arrows, and then it has D over E. I did not know, but that guy right there, if you access that second, it will take this mixed number and put it back as an improper fraction. So I did my answer, and that's 33/13. Now I can push it again, second ABC, and it will put it back as a mixed number. I had no idea until yesterday that that's what that button was for. So you can use those two buttons. We do the F to D button all the time to take fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions. And if it doesn't change to a fraction, then you don't have it as possible, so then you would have to round. So I just thought that was interesting. So those were two main things that I wanted to address today, were the questions that I got already from our ENC pages, which is yay. I want to be able to discuss them. I also wanted to make sure that I did talk about the no reassignment, so that if we were having issues still with that, it boggled my mind that that was going to even be there. I had no idea. So please make sure that if you have any additional questions, that you do ask, because at this point, the only thing that you are now responsible for, before we actually talk about the test after break, is the no-re questions and your ENC pages. So that is all I had planned for today, was to make sure that I went over those few things, asked if you had any questions, and then we would be finished for the day. So, are there any other questions that you would like for me to address? You can either let me know that you emailed them to me. I keep checking. And I don't see anything. So, if there are no other questions, do we think it's safe to sign off for the day? You guys have a great rest of your day. I miss you all. Please make sure you guys stay safe, stay inside, stay away from people. Let's get back to school as fast as we can. And I will see all of you Monday.